How you doing, Mike?
Good, David. Nice to see you.
Thanks. We're here with Michael Aaronson of the Aaronson Law Firm in El Paso, Texas. We're just here going to do another podcast for the local area business talk. So anyway, let's just introduce you to the public. You've been a lawyer here in El Paso for how many years?
For about 49 years.
Wow.
Going on 50, I think.
Well,
Can't remember anymore.
that's a long time. That's great, man. What kind of areas of law do you cover?
Well, mostly it's the items that are listed on my website. It's criminal law, both felonies and misdemeanors. I do expunctions and the sealing of records, which is where you seal it from the public's eyes. I do expunctions, which is the same thing, but it actually clears criminal histories that people have when background checks are done totally off of their record. I do things having to do with the Department of Public Safety, like driver's license issues, driver's license suspensions, the appealing of driver's license suspensions. I do occupational driver's licenses. Those are also called essential needs driver's licenses, and that is a way for people whose driver's licenses have been affected, impaired, canceled, recalled, revoked, blah, 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 especially CDL drivers to be able to get their driver's license. It's basically an order from the court and from a judge that directs and orders the DPS to issue a license, and it makes it so that they can legally drive in spite that the DPS has impaired their driver's license in some way, shape, or form. I do pretty much that sort of thing. I clear impediments to be able so that people aren't hindered getting their driver's licenses,
right,
and registration, things of that nature.
Yeah, I see that here. I'm going to get on your website so I can just ask you questions about
Sure.
the kind of things you do. So we'll just kind of go down the list and just give me a brief description of like what that entails. Maybe talk about some of the cases you've handled in the past.
Sure.
But okay, so we're going to start with the CDL. Those are commercial driver's license. I'm assuming those are like truck drivers, right?
That's right. The vast majority of CDL holders are truck drivers because a commercial driver's license is defined under the law, but basically it's something that resembles an 18-wheeler. There's a lot of small facts that aren't important to go into here, but CDL holders, many of them rely on their driver's license because without the ability to drive a commercial vehicle, then they're not able to, make wages, provide for their family, on and on and on. So it's a valuable privilege for people to have, and those CDL holders normally guard that privilege with a great deal of caution because obviously they know the detriments of having not
losing
being able,
the license,
losing their license or whatnot.
So when somebody has a CDL, I guess you help them with their traffic tickets as well. But what happens if like a CDL holder, a commercial driver's license holder, gets their license revoked? You're able to help them get that reinstated?
Well, now when they have certain type of suspensions, you cannot sometimes get it reinstated, but you can always get them a regular driver's license so that they can have the driving privileges that you and I would have not being CDL or commercial driver's license holders. So, yeah, and there are times when the commercial driver's license holders get revocation notices from the DPS, either that the DPS is seeking to cancel their license, revoke their license, suspend it, or cancel it. I represent those people in hearings, and we can usually be successful, but if not, we always have the avenue of being able to appeal that and having a brand new hearing or a brand new trial in the court that it goes to, which is the El Paso County Courts. And what's good about that is that juries are sympathetic to CDL holders, and we're entitled to actually have a jury trial if it becomes necessary. Usually it's not necessary.
You'll usually make a deal with the district attorney
make some deal with the DPS attorney, and if not, we go to trial and we try the case.
Okay, so
it's pretty straightforward.
That's a great option to have. I never realized, because somebody gets a license suspended, they usually just have to wait years and years. But it's good to know that they can hire an attorney and try to get that fixed.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people, they just aren't aware that when they get a letter from the DPS that they do have options. They have great options, because probably I would say maybe 90% of those cases brought by the DPS may not even be valid legally, or if they are valid, we can always work a negotiated resolution where the people do not get their licenses revoked or suspended. They may go on probation for a couple of days, but that's not a big deal, because the condition is simply that they can't be convicted of any moving violations. They can get a moving violation. They can have had a moving violation, but they just can't be found guilty during that probationary time limit set by the court. Gotcha. Usually it's not more than a couple of months.
No, it's not too bad.
It's easy. Yeah.
That's great. So that you can appeal these types of suspensions. Is there a time limit, like, for example, when their license gets suspended, where they can go seek an attorney's advice?
Yeah, and that's really, really important. Usually from the time that they get that letter, I believe it's either 15 or 20 days, and the DPS is very, very strict about that. Sometimes you can have what is called good cause. That's basically just, a more fancy word than just a good reason for not having responded within the required amount of time. Somebody might be out of town. Somebody may have just moved their home address and forgot to send to the post office one of those forwarding addresses or something like that. So there's a lot of options, and all of them are, they're reasonable options. And most of the judges are fairly reasonable when it comes to these cases.
Okay, great. That's really good information to know. I'm just going over here through your website and all the types of different things that you handle. ODL, I'm guessing that's occupational driver's license, right?
Yeah.
Can you kind of go into some detail, just a little bit of detail about what that is, what that entails?
So an occupational driver's license is just basically, it's also called, what I mentioned before, it's called an essential needs driver's license. And basically, it's a driver's license that's given by the court, ordered by the court, and it's so that people don't be deprived of their ability to go to the doctor, to pick up their kids, take them to school, go to work, go to whatever essential need somebody needs. The license provides a way to be able to go ahead and complete that particular need. Like I say, it's work, it's family items. And so, you're allowed to drive for essential needs. And again, it's also called what you mentioned, an occupational driver's license. And the way it works, if, basically the judges in these cases sometimes grant them without even a hearing. A lot of the other class of people that need these are people who are arrested for DWI, because every single person in the state of Texas who's arrested for a DWI has action taken against them by the DPS attempting to suspend their license for a certain period of time. So the judges in these cases are usually very, very willing to give an occupational driver's license. They're supposed to when an essential need exists, like, picking up the kids, going to school, going to work, blah, blah, blah. And so
is that license good throughout the whole state of Texas, or just like the area they live in, for example, just in El Paso, Texas?
It's good everywhere where your normal license would be good. It's good in El Paso. It's good in the state of Texas, all the cities and counties, and it's good in the United States, because think about it. You don't need to get a different driver's license if you're driving cross country, right? And you wouldn't have to get a new license in every single state that you pass through.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to say a delivery truck driver and I got to drive from El Paso to, say, Van Horn every day. It's perfectly, that'll work.
Yeah, and there's no restrictions. There should not be any restrictions. I don't believe if a judge imposed restrictions that it would even be lawful. It would be contrary to existing law.
Well, that's good to know. You mentioned DWIs and DUIs. I know DWI is driving while intoxicated. DUIs are driving under the influence. You handle those types of cases too. Can you tell me the difference between those two, DWI and DUI?
Well,
is there a difference?
I'm not sure I even know. Here's what driving under the influence just means that you're driving an automobile under the influence, but being under the influence of alcohol or medicine or drugs or whatever. You can be, I guess, intoxicated to a point where you're not considered to be legally intoxicated, because legally intoxicated has a definition in Texas.
Got it.
It's that you have 0.08 BAC blood alcohol content or more. That's what intoxication is. There's also another definition, because sometimes people are intoxicated, but not on alcohol, maybe on medicine, prescription or otherwise, maybe on drugs, illegal, whatever.
Right.
And so the definition of intoxication in those situations is that a person lost the normal use of their mental or physical faculties. So it's basically losing the normal use of your mental or physical faculties, or both.
Or both, yeah. Okay, so obviously alcohol is the most common one, but if somebody's smoking a lot of weed, let's say, because it's legal in New Mexico, and we're just down the street to get to New Mexico in like 10 minutes from here.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people smoke weed and drive. How does a police officer determine that when somebody's getting pulled over under the influence and they do the alcohol test and there's no alcohol in the system, but they're still kind of a little loopy or whatever?
Yeah.
Maybe they drank too much NyQuil or whatever. But how does a police officer determine that?
Well, that's a really good question. So the way that right now things are is that they only have the ability to request what is called a Field Sobriety Test.
Yes, I heard of that.
It's basically, and what the law enforcement officers do is they ask you if you'll be willing to do this, which is usually an attempt by law enforcement to gather more evidence to support the case in court that you were driving under the influence or driving while you were intoxicated. And the Field Sobriety Test basically has three different parts. The first part is called the horizontal Gaze Nystagmus. They call it the HGN test. So when you drink alcohol and maybe some other drugs, it has an effect which is an involuntary effect on your eyeballs. And what happens is that the officer asks you to follow his finger, and he takes it out one way and at a certain speed, and the other way, and up and down and on and on and on. And if he sees that your eyeball is jerking, that's known as a condition called nystagmus. That is an indication that you have consumed alcohol. It's not an indication of whether you're intoxicated. It just simply, it basically detects the simple fact that you have alcohol in your body. Again, it doesn't quantify how much you've had to drink. You might have the same nystagmus at 0.05 as you have at 0.5. So there's no way for an officer to use that to measure alcohol. The other two tests are what we call the walk and turn test, where the officer tests, and this one is mental in addition to being physical. He tests your ability to follow his instructions, where he says walk heel to toe, 9 steps out, then turn around, walk 9 steps back, heel to toe. So what happens is that after he gives you instructions, points are subtracted for every what they call a clue. A clue might be that you step off the line, or that you lose your balance, or that you don't remember the instructions. Maybe you'll take 3 steps and turn around, on and on and on. And for every clue, points are subtracted, which gives them a way to score the test, which supposedly has some indication about whether you are not legally intoxicated. And the last test is something that is called the OLG, one-legged stand, OLS. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's just when the officer gives you some instructions. You lift one of your feet off the ground straight in front of you, and he asks that you count, just begin counting, 1,000, 2, 1,000, on and on and on, to see how well your balance is, and so on and so forth, which might be indications of alcohol consumption and intoxication. And so they use those tests to bring into the courtroom and try to help persuade a jury that according to the tests and the way that they were scored, that it is an indication that you were in fact, intoxicated at the time.
So I know this might be, let me segue into this. It's pretty much similar though. Like, do you handle drug possession charges as well?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, kind of just talk about that real quick, maybe in a few paragraphs.
Yeah. I mean, so
somebody gets arrested for some drug possession.
Yeah. The classic,
like what's the most common? Yeah.
Yeah. The most common drug case is usually someone's driving their vehicle, and for whatever reason, a police officer finds what is called reasonable suspicion to pull them over, and they get pulled over, and maybe somebody just smoked a joint in the car. Cop's going to say, well, I smell pot in here, I'm going to search your car, and that gives me the right, which it does. Law enforcement has a right. They don't, searching a car or any private place is really a sacred right that we have under the Constitution, because we have the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures. And a car is considered a place where you have and you enjoy all these privacy rights. But when a police officer smells pot, marijuana or any other drug, they do have a right to search your car. So again,
probable cause. Is that what that is?
Well, it's reasonable suspicion at first, and then to actually arrest somebody, they do need what is called probable cause, and it means basically what it sounds like. It needs an important element of probable cause is that the police officer must be able to articulate specific facts to a judge in order that you be arrested appropriately or lawfully. And when it comes to just, the cop saying, well, I had a hunch, that's not good enough. And it hasn't been good enough for many, many years since the Supreme Court of the United States decided that on a case. They have to be able to have, again, articulable facts that they can present to a judge that will assure a judge that their reason for having searched or found whatever is a valid reason under the current existing laws.
Does that happen a lot where you get cases dismissed because the police officer didn't do the procedures correctly?
Yeah, and police officers, they try to do everything right, but a lot of times, many times, they just don't get it, and they don't get it right. A different way it occurs is when a police officer pulls someone who has drugs on him over and says, well, look, I'd like to search your car. Is that okay? And people don't realize that, they have a right to refuse. And if they don't give a consent to search, then the police officer can't search unless there are other factors. There's something called exigent circumstances, and there's other items that may come into play. But generally, people should know that they have a right to resist and not consent to a search. Another thing that people like you and I should know is that when you get pulled over, law enforcement many times asks these questions. Well, where are you coming from, and where are you going, and blah blah blah. The wise thing to do in cases like that is just politely say, officer, I'd rather not discuss my day with you. Am I being detained? And if I am, what am I being detained for?
So less is more in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good to know. Not that I
Yeah.
plan
I
on
mean,
driving under the influence or anything like that, but
I had a friend who was coming back from the airport one night, and he's kind of a wise guy, and he got pulled over by a cop, and the cop starts asking him, well, where do you live? Where are you going? And he said to the cop, I want to know why you want to know where I live. Why do you want to know where I live? Are you going to come visit me? He should have got arrested maybe for being rude, but you can't do that.
yeah. So what would you advise somebody that pulled over is don't volunteer information, but still try to be as polite and courteous as possible?
Absolutely.
Probably the best route.
Always be as polite as you can, as short and concise as you can, and don't volunteer information. And your primary question is, am I being detained? And if so, why?
And so I guess this also pertains to just regular traffic stops, because you do traffic tickets as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Class C misdemeanors.
Yeah. And you know, what's funny is that when a lot of law enforcement officers pull people over, the first thing they say, for example, in a speeding deal, you know, a speeding citation, do you know how fast you were going? Because they want the person to admit that they were going faster than the speed limit. And people just, people are a little bit unnerved when they get pulled over. I know that I used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so people are kind of caught off guard, and they don't seem to maintain their cool, you know? So, yeah, if you can keep your cool in situations like that, you'll do a lot better. People a lot of times volunteer unnecessary information that may actually end up, working against them, because whatever you say to a cop before you're under arrest is able to be repeated by the law enforcement officer in a court of law. It's not considered hearsay, and it's not subject to the Miranda rights warnings that they're required to give upon arrest.
Well, this has been very informative. It looks like you cover a lot of areas. People make mistakes. They get in trouble all the, just happens. Let's say you get them off on a probation, or maybe you even find them guilty with a reduced fine or some kind of probationary period. That's still on their record, right? So do you have like a mechanism where you can get things, you do expungements as well, right?
Yeah.
Criminal or kind of go into that, like where you can just kind of get something off somebody's record?
Sure. And that's a really good question, because much of the public, so many people are not aware that when you get a criminal record of any sort, even if it's a traffic ticket, if you get a misdemeanor, felony, there are ways to deal with that so that it doesn't pop up when people do background checks on you. And I tell all my clients, especially those that are young, look, those young people are going to be going out. They're going to be looking for jobs. They're going to be looking for apartments. They're going to be getting loans, blah, 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 blah. So if you have anything on your criminal record, yeah, it can really affect all of those things.
Could hinder, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of collateral consequences. And I encourage everybody to, when it's possible, to always make sure that they've eliminated any arrests or other items on their criminal history so that it doesn't continue to pop up, and there's the expunction. So there's two things basically, and only two things. The two ways to protect your record in Texas are by expunction. That's the first one. And then by what is called an order of non-disclosure. The order of non-disclosure is basically where a person is able to get their criminal history sealed from the public view. So there are expunctions is the better of the two, and I do both expunctions and non-disclosures. Expunction is a process where we file a lawsuit and we request that a judge order all the records of any criminal event on your record that pops up or doesn't pop up, that it be expunged. Expunction just means it's a way to destroy all the criminal records that exist. Wow. And the really neat thing is that when you get an expunction, you can even deny the existence of that particular occurrence. So
you mean like on a job application?
Yeah, you can legally deny that it happened, and it shouldn't pop up anywhere. ever.
So it's like it never happened.
Yeah, it's like exactly right. It's as if it never happened. Now, the expunction statute is kind of complicated, but when you have a complicated situation, most of them are pretty straightforward. People call me when I ask them how the case was disposed. If they give me an accurate description, I can usually tell them right then and there whether they're going to be eligible for an expunction. And if they're not, they may be eligible next for an order of non-disclosure where their records are sealed from the public. And that's just a process where a judge makes an order that the person's records are sealed from the public use. There's a lot of exceptions. Many agencies can still get those records. Law enforcement can always get it. Licensing agencies in the state of Texas can always get it. Like if you go to work for a hairstylist, I think they need a license. So a hairstylist may be able to get that information because she requires a license from the state of Texas to conduct her business. So, but they're really valuable.
Even with the expunction, they can still get access to that?
No, that's only on the order of non-disclosure.
Oh, non-disclosure.
Expunction, again, it erases everything off your record. You can deny it ever happened.
Even if you apply to the Border Patrol or the FBI.
Anything. Now, the federal people, the federal system, I think does, I'm not sure, but they do some sort of retention, but it's very, very, very limited so far as I know. And I don't think I've ever done an expunction where my client has told me that it popped up on the federal side.
Wow, what a amazing tool to have for people that made mistakes and stuff like that.
It's great.
Well, Mike, just real quick, this is the Aaronson Law Firm here in El Paso, Texas, at 7362 Remcon Circle, El Paso, Texas, located here on the west side. But you handle all of El Paso County, is that correct?
Yeah, and I handle a lot of stuff statewide. Class C misdemeanors that are in justice of the peace courts throughout the
Texas.
state.
Okay, cool.
I do those. Sometimes I'll do a municipal ticket in another county. I do criminal cases close by, but if it's further than the neighboring 2 or 3 counties, I always consider doing that, or I try to work with an attorney down in whatever area the event occurred. So yeah, I try to.
What's a good phone number if anybody's watching this to give you a call, get a consultation?
Should I give you my office or my cell?
Probably your office for your secretary, because you're probably in court all the time. But it's hard to get a hold of you myself. So,
well, my office number is 915-533-0110.
Yeah. So, Aaronson Law Firm, Michael Aaronson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
David. I appreciate you.